There is another video about souls that I'm working on and that I'll be putting out soon. But I saw this story in the media about Chrisean preaching at a church called Faith City Central and felt like I needed to take a moment to address it. As a Christian, I am extremely concerned about the manner in which we as a body handle people when they profess to be new to the faith, especially celebrities, any people who have clout in the world before they come to the faith. Now, this particular video isn't a criticism of Chrisean personally, because I don't hold her responsible for being in the pulpit. If she is genuine in what she's doing, she's quite new to the faith and hasn't been through the process or studied enough to know that she shouldn't be up there. However, there should be people around her in the leadership of that church that have been through those processes enough to know the difference between wrong and right and actually protect her from the consequences of getting up on the pulpit. Because just as there are benefits to getting up on the pulpit, there are consequences when a person is exposed too quickly to ministerial duties. Now, what I'm trying to describe is this. When you're first new to the faith, you're initially extremely excited because you've gone from death to life. Your spirit man is alive and awake, and you are right with your Creator, which is a beautiful thing. But a lot of new Christians are not informed that once you've been initiated, there is a process of pruning, refinement, and deliverance that will take place if you are intending on walking with God for real, especially if you're called into ministry or a position of leadership. You are definitely going to have to go through that process and be submitted to study and quiet time with God. This is a season that can last several years. Usually, it's a season that is intense and involves various levels of spiritual warfare. And because people who are new to the faith are inexperienced in spiritual warfare, it's a time that requires mentorship and guidance so the person can pass through that season safely and emerge victorious on the other side. Many Christians will call this season a wilderness season, where they are going through struggles that God will permit to refine their character and teach them about His ways, build their trust, break generational curses, expose their motives and bad habits, break their self-reliance, and build their faith, to prepare their hearts to serve people with a healthy regard for God. This same process is something that the Israelites had to pass through, and that I would venture to say every Christian has to pass through, and it's a very delicate time. It is not the time to be in a pulpit preaching messages. At that point, you may have heard the word, but I would also bet that you have not lived in it long enough. You haven't walked with God long enough to live it out, meaning that the word stands as true, but you have not yet had the opportunity to apply it to your life and bear fruit. This doesn't mean that someone who has a testimony or gets saved has to be fully matured or processed in order to tell their story and give God glory. But having specific events and testimony nights where people are invited at all stages of maturity to talk about what God is doing in their lives is different from someone getting up on a pulpit in front of a congregation in what appears to be a ministerial capacity. These people have not yet been submitted to the process and have not proved themselves in the faith to be trusted with the authority and the power to watch over other people's souls and to preach the word of God with both pure motives and correct interpretation. They also have not been battle-hardened to sustain the spiritual warfare and spiritual disciplines that are required to get up on the pulpit and not be destroyed. Standing before God's people in any ministerial capacity is never to be taken lightly. We wrestle, not against flesh and blood, meaning that when you get up to preach or pray for bodies of people, that is an act of warfare to the kingdom of darkness, and you best believe that there is going to be a response. There's nowhere that you're going to go to do the work of God that there isn't going to be resistance from the kingdom of darkness because you pose a threat. And if your life is not in order, if there are doors that are open that should have been closed, If you do not have knowledge and experience of the word enough to have built the faith necessary for effective warfare, you can be destroyed. This is one reason why we have some celebrities who will profess to be in the faith and be very excited, and within 3 to 5 business days, they're up on somebody's pulpit on TV preaching, or they're releasing a gospel album. Sometimes it's just a business move, where they're trying to tap into a new audience, but other times these people are actually genuine. They're struggling. They're excited about God and want to use the platform that they built in the world to promote Him. But then there is the natural resistance in the kingdom of darkness, because how can you build a platform on sin and think that you're going to then use that same platform to promote God? There is always a reaction in the realm of the spirit that will manifest physically, and these same people get attacked and begin to struggle. Often you'll hear them talk about depression, anxiety, nightmares, financial struggles, temptations to provide for themselves by going back to their old lifestyles. But they haven't sat with God in hiding and preparation for the ministerial work that they are launched into, to have given Him the opportunity to prove Himself as their sole protector and provider. They don't have a personal and intimate revelation of God's faithfulness. Getting up on a pulpit to preach, releasing gospel albums, making YouTube videos, these are all forms of ministry. The larger the audience, the more influence you have, and the more warfare you will attract. So then you see them within 6 months to a year, back in the old lifestyle they were in before, because they didn't have the guidance and support. They weren't given the wisdom to leave their old lives and associates behind, hide away with God quietly, and go through the process of being refined and built up before being sent out into the world with influence. The leaders around them don't engage in spiritual warfare on their behalf, and they don't teach them how to stand on their own either. The church leaders that are meant to hold them accountable and guide them are more interested in benefiting off of the clout that they accrued while they were still in sin. They are more interested in fame than in preserving and protecting a vulnerable soul. And this kind of thing makes me incredibly upset, and I think it's so irresponsible. We all have to fear God more than we care about clout, and love people more than we care about money, more than we care about the money that will be made off of the person's conversion. Don't get me wrong. God will be with you when you are new to the faith. However, He established a system on earth that is meant to mirror the system in heaven for a reason. Even in the heavens, there are powers that are assigned to enforce God's will, which is His order. His order is meant to keep us safe. It is our responsibility to use the authority and knowledge He has given us to enforce His order. We shouldn't expect people that are new to the faith to do that, and we shouldn't leave them out in the wilderness without this guidance and then blame God for bad outcomes, which are the consequence of our negligence. He will be with them, but we are meant to be His ambassadors and take dominion in this world. That means that there is an aspect to making it in the realm of the spirit that involves support from this physical dimension, and we are the ones to offer that, not God. He made provision for that by building His church. When we fail to participate in the process, we set others up for failure. As Christians, we are always our brother's keeper. I can speak with confidence about the necessity of this process because I have been through it. I'm still going through. To walk with God is to submit to a lifetime of seasons and processes. Speak to anyone who has walked with God and been victorious through hard seasons, especially those who are being prepared for ministry, and I guarantee you they will say the same. They had to go through the process before being exposed to the world. They had to go through the process before engaging in the level of warfare that is required to sustain public ministry. Again, this isn't an attack on Chrisean Rock personally, because I don't believe it is her responsibility to know this, And I do think that there is a place for people being able to share their testimonies and encourage others regardless of how new they are to the faith. I'm just saying that I don't think pulpits are the place, especially when there are large platforms involved, and definitely when they haven't been tested and refined over time. We have to love these people enough to allow them to be covered by God, to be hidden, to steer them in the right direction when they are new to the faith. And as a church, we have to be more discerning as to when people are genuine versus when they are trying to capitalize on the hidden desires people have to have one foot in the church and one foot out. There are people that will have a famous celebrity get in the pulpit and feel like that means they can ignore the conviction they feel when listening to the music the artist produced while they were still in sin. The book of James talks about people being led away by their own evil desires. Let's be honest about our motives and care enough about people to require them to submit to God's order and processing. Anything otherwise is immature, uninformed, and selfish, ultimately dangerous. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to have a single soul's blood on my hands because I refuse to put greed or vainglory aside. I also don't want to be responsible for platforming people who make a mockery of what should be regarded as sacred.